defenses are ready. Gearbox here.
Hey guys, Bobags here, and well, hello. This time we're coming at you with a slightly different vibe of game. This time it's Hood, Outlaws and Legends, and welcome to my Eidaa guide. So just wanted to make a little video because we had a little look online on YouTube and couldn't see any other Eidaa guides on there, like literally not even one at the time of making this video. There's a few like first impression stuff on there, like back from when she first came out, but no real like proper character guides. So just thought, you know what, I've got quite a lot of time on her. I've basically been spamming Eidaa since she came out, which is about a month and a half ago now. And just thought, why not make a video, share some things that I've learned, maybe help somebody speed learn her or whatever. So Eidaa is the newest character to Hood, Outlaws and Legends. She is the latest addition to the roster of Outlaws. And in my opinion, she is the most fun character to play by a long, long way. Now, she does take a bit of getting used to. She is very different to the other Outlaws. She will feel a little bit weird when you first jump on her. But I promise, just give her some time, give her a shot, and you will be having a lot of fun. Just give her a chance and you will really start to enjoy this character. So I think what a lot of players did when Eidaa first came out was just kind of jumped on her just to try her out, just played a few games, and then quite quickly and swiftly decided that she was not for them, and then was like, okay, no, I'm done. Like, now I'm going to go back to my main, you know, go back to my Turk or my Robin or whoever, or like, dare I say, go back to my Marianne. Oh dear. And but yeah, I think that's what a lot of people did, and I think that's the reason why you don't tend to see many Eidas in game these days. Just like not many people play her, which is a bit of a shame because, as I say, she is so much fun to play. So just a little introduction. So Eidaa is a mystical sellsword. She's like a warrior slash assassin-y type of character. She's a real damage dealer. She is very bursty. She puts out an incredible amount of damage over a very short space of time. The trade-off is that she is very, very squishy. She has one of the lowest health pools in the game, one that is not too dissimilar to that of Marianne's. As a result, she must be played very carefully. But if you play her in the right way, I promise you will be a force to be reckoned with. You will strike fear in the hearts of your enemies on the battlefield, and I'll show you how. So she's a very different type of character, whereas you have your blockers and your parriers with John and Took, then you've got your dodgers with Marianne and Robin. Eidaa can actually do a bit of both. She can both parry and dodge, putting her in a very unique position. This makes her very versatile, adaptable, and very deadly. This video is going to follow a fairly logical format. We're going to start off with the perks build, so the synergy, how everything synergizes together. I do believe I found the strongest Eidaa build, so we'll cover that. Then we'll move on to some playstyle stuff, some hints and tips, and then finally we will finish on one full match, just so you can get an idea of how I think she should be played across the length of a whole game. So just a little disclaimer, this build does require a little bit of grinding. It does make use of Eida's higher level perks, so level 9, level 10 perks, etc. So yeah, it does need a bit of grinding to get everything that you need, but I promise in the end, it will be worth it. It'll be worthwhile. You'll thank me later. So with that said, we take a look at the build. So perk number 1, we are starting off with Mighty Protector. So this is the ability meter charges quicker, but the ability's active duration is reduced. So what that is basically you are obviously all the time just like constantly passively gaining your ability meter. With this perk equipped, you will now be gaining your ability much quicker, at a much quicker rate. It may not seem like it, but it does make a big difference. Obviously the trade-off is that the duration of the ability is reduced, but as I will explain and as you'll see, the way we're going to use the ability in this build, that is not going to matter too much. It's not going to matter so much. The point being is that you are gaining the ability much quicker, therefore you will be able to use it a lot more regularly. And the reason why that will be so useful will be explained as we go further through the build. So we move on to perk number 2. So this is a level 9 perk. Purifying Aura. Deploying the shield sends out a shockwave that neutralizes all enemy gear in the area. Now this is going to be super useful and super clutch in various situations. But again, the reason why will be explained as we cover the final perk. So we move on to the final perk. So this is Eida's level 10 perk. It is her strongest perk and she does kind of need it in my opinion. And that is going to be Shield Strike. So deploying the ability creates a shockwave that damages and staggers nearby enemies. Now this is going to be so useful for Eidaa. Obviously you can always still use your ability in the classic way, the defensive way to defend critical locations such as the winch. But now you also have the option and the flexibility to use your ability in a more offensive way, in an aggressive way, to damage and stagger any nearby enemies to you on the battlefield. It's going to make a huge difference in those combat situations and scenarios. It's going to really help give you the advantage in those 1v1 fights. It's going to help give your team the advantage in those team fights, which is obviously massive. And overall, it's just a very strong perk. The damage that it does to the enemies is like it's a hefty amount. It's not too much. I wouldn't say it's too strong, but it's a decent amount of damage. And the stagger is going to be so useful, as you'll see. So the way this ties in with everything else, so if we go back to perk number 1. So obviously now we are going to be using our ability in a few different ways, rather than like the classic defensive way. So as a result, we are going to want to be able to use it more regularly. And Mighty Protector is going to do that, because now we are getting the meter quicker, therefore we can use it more often. And then obviously with perk number 2, so now because we're using the ability a lot more frequently, so every time we use it, and obviously we're going to be using it more often in those combat, mid-combat situations, and every time we do that, we are also neutralizing all of the enemy gear in the area, which is going to massively help our team out in those team fights. So yeah, so that's everything. That's how everything ties in together. That's the synergy. So we move on to some playstyle stuff. Firstly, some general bits. So yes, Eidaa is obviously a melee class, and yes, she obviously needs to come in close to do her damage. But make no mistake about it, she cannot stand out in the front. She cannot stand in front of people's faces in the way that John and Took can. She must be very careful. She must be played very sneaky and stealthy. The best way I can describe it is if you imagine Marianne, and imagine she doesn't have any of the tools that make her more stealthy. So she doesn't have a smoke bomb, she doesn't have her invisibility. And imagine how Marianne would need to be played then, and that is how Eidaa should be played. That is how Eidaa is played most effectively, in my opinion. So in general, just really wanting to stay out of visibility as much as possible, line of sight your enemies as much as possible. She has a relatively small character frame. She kind of disappears when she crouches into bushes, so make the most of that. In general, you never really want to be the first member of your team entering a fight most of the time. Kind of only really coming in close for fights when it is almost already too late for the enemy to react. Opt for assassinations where possible. She also has to be quite careful when it comes to the state. I feel like Eidaa has to be more careful when it comes to getting spotted and getting tagged by the state than other outlaws do. You really want the element of surprise on your side as much as possible. You can get a bit more aggressive in the way you take on fights once you get more comfortable with the dodge and parry timing. Eida's light attacks really are her bread and butter. They are what you're going to want to be using and relying on most of the time. They're very quick and they do a lot of damage considering they are just light attacks. Her heavy attack is very slow and very telegraphed, especially her running heavy. In general, you are going to want to stay away from these. They are very easy for your enemy to read and gives them a lot of time to react, to dodge or parry, and you end up in a sticky situation. There are one or two situations where a heavy attack is a preferable choice, but I will go over these. But in general, your light attacks are going to be your main go-to for fights. When attacking enemies, I highly recommend that you are always using the lock-on target feature, which I believe on PC by default is the F key. The reason for this is that during Eida's light attack animation, she tends to move around quite a lot. She moves forward quite a lot. She covers quite a lot of distance. And by the time you finished your attack animation, you will be in a completely different position to where you were when you started it. And as a result of this, if there happens to be like a nearby wandering NPC, just like a nearby wandering state guard, you may find that halfway through your attack animation, you will suddenly accidentally switch targets onto the NPC, just because it was closer to you at that point in time. And you will not be able to finish off the enemy player that you were trying to finish off, and that will be super annoying. So you always want to be using the lock-on target feature to prevent that from happening. For me, that was quite natural because coming from previously being a Took main, And obviously Took's bread and butter is his long range heavy, and obviously because it's long range, if there's a lot of enemies like bunched up or clustered up together, he's always using the lock on just to make sure he's attacking the right person. The same principle applies to Eidaa.
Defenses are ready.
With Eida's attack combo, you'll see it's like 2 pairs of double attacks. Now it's good to remember that the first of the pair of attacks does slightly less damage, and the second one of the pair does slightly more damage. A lot of your killing blows are likely to come from the second one of the pair. So if you take an enemy Robin, for example, the first attack of the pair does about 1/5 or just over 1/5 in damage to his HP bar. The second attack does just over 1/4. So after one pair of attacks, Robin is on about half HP. The second pair of attacks kills the enemy Robin. The same applies for enemy Marianne's and Eida's. Versus enemy Took's, he requires 3 pairs of attacks to kill from full HP, and an enemy John, especially with the perk Stable Tank, requires 4 to 5 pairs of attacks to kill from full HP. So a lot of care needs to be taken when versing Johns, especially in 1v1 situations, because he is obviously going to have a lot of opportunities to get a parry off and put you in a bad situation. The other thing worth remembering, not to get too technical, is the amount of time delay in between your attacks, and also this varying depending on whether you're on the first of the pair of attacks or the second of the pair, because they are slightly different, and we did time it. The delay in between the attacks on the first pair is about half a second. Now this doesn't sound like a long time, but it does feel like a while. It feels a little bit slow, especially when you are in the middle of an intense fight and you are, or maybe you're on very low HP, or that you desperately need to get out of a fight, or you desperately need to confirm a kill. You need to be careful. It's a slightly risky situation because half a second is ample enough time for an enemy player to time a parry and then end up finishing you off. If you happen to be in this situation and you're on the second of the pair of attacks, this is a better position to be in because there is only 1/3 of a second delay in between your attacks. It's not much time. It doesn't give the enemy player much time to react. So this is a safer position to be in when you're trying to confirm that kill. The fact that Eidaa can both parry and dodge means that she can approach fights in a very unique way. Her dodge is kind of cool because she's able to dodge and then immediately follow up with an attack, literally straight after dodging, with almost no time delay. Now, the other dodgers in the game, Marianne and Robin, are not able to do this. They must completely finish their dodge animation, and even then there is a slight delay until they are ready to attack again. Eidaa does not suffer from this. She can dodge and then she is immediately ready to attack as soon as she's finished dodging. And even beyond that, she can actually attack halfway through a dodge. She can be halfway through the animation, and she can attack and it ends the dodge and she goes into an attack. This is very, very cool. It's very strong. She's the only outlaw that can do this. It's a very strong maneuver to kind of get comfortable with, and it really, really helps her out in her 1v1 matchups against the other outlaws. As we move on to some further playstyle stuff, one thing I don't see enough Eida's doing is making good use of her gear refill ability. It's really useful, especially when used at the right time. It's easy to forget about it, and it's easy to just be selfish with it and only ever use it for yourself. But really, just every single time you're going past a gearbox, always just stop and just look behind you, look around you, just stop and check to see if you've got any nearby teammates that are travelling the same sort of route and are going to go past the same gearbox. A good thing to do is just ping it before you use it. And if you look around, if you see a teammate just suddenly stop what they're doing and start to make their way over, then you know that they probably need the gear as well. You can take your tar bomb, use the refill, and then both you and your teammate both get your gear. And obviously, if it doesn't look like another teammate needs it, then you can obviously just save your refill, and then maybe later on you find another gearbox, it's empty, and you need your tar bomb, and you can just use it on yourself. Speaking of Eida's tar bomb, so it's a really, really awesome gear item. I guess its main role is denial of your enemy's freedom of movement, and it does a very good job of this, whether it be holding down, locking down a certain territory at a certain point in time, or forcing your enemy to move away from an area of advantage, or making it so that they can't go through a certain area at that point in time, or flushing out an enemy if you're not exactly sure where he is, you just have an idea of the area, or slowing down the enemy team if you know they have to go through a certain area. It has a lot of uses, and it is really, really strong. One of the things to get used to is the detonation time on the tar bomb, because there is a slight delay. I think from when it lands, it is about a second or maybe 2 seconds until it actually detonates. So it becomes not so much about throwing it at where your enemies are right now, but throwing it at where you think they're going to be in a couple of seconds' time. Obviously, if enemies just staying in the same place for quite a long time because there's a team fight going on or whatever, then obviously you can just throw it straight at their feet. But other than that, it becomes more about kind of, enemy movement prediction. But it's something that will come with time. I think there is a perk that decreases the detonation time of the tar bomb, but I would argue you don't need it. After just a little bit of time, a little bit of practice, you'll get pretty good at just making effective use of the normal tar bomb, and I think there's better perk choices than that one. One great use of the tar bomb is for match delay. So we've all been there, haven't we? Been in that situation where you're kind of unseen somewhere, the enemy team don't know where you are, the rest of your team had just been wiped and the enemy team is about to winch, and you know they're going to get some good progress on their winch bar, and it's just you by yourself. Like, you've got to somehow like delay the match somehow, some way, and the tar bomb is absolutely perfect for that. So you just throw the tar bomb in, you will notice that the enemy team will jump off the winch pretty quick, because after not too long the damage over time mounts up a lot. Or they'll stay on the winch, at which point their health will start to drop so low that then you'll be able to just come in and finish them off normally. So yeah, it's perfect for match delay, and it's a great use of the tar bomb. Finally, we get to the ultimate ability usage. In my opinion, the most interesting and exciting part of the build. So thanks to the perk Shield Strike, we now have all of these new aggressive and offensive ways in which we can use our ability. And as you'll see in these clips, it makes a massive difference and really helps Eidaa out so much in so many situations. Situations such as maybe you've just lost the advantage in a fight that you're having, maybe the enemy John or the enemy Took has just pulled off a nice parry, suddenly things are not looking so good for your Eidaa. You've got your ability available, you can drop it, and I promise it will make a huge difference. So they will take the initial damage from the ability itself, which, like I say, is a decent amount. This alone may be enough to kill them, and if it's not, they are then also staggered afterwards. Now, damage they receive while they are staggered, they can do nothing about. It is unavoidable. They can't dodge it, they can't block it, they cannot do anything because they're staggered. The amount that they are staggered depends on how close they are to you when you use the ability. If they are literally right next to you when you use it, they will be completely floored, as in off their feet. This is the best possible scenario, as it leaves them wide open for a lot of follow-up attacks. If they're a little bit further away from you, sort of like medium distance, they will be pushed back significantly, and if they are further away than that, then they will just be pushed back ever so slightly. So obviously the closer they are to you when you use it, the better. If the ability itself doesn't kill them, then you can normally almost always finish them off during the time they're staggered. Just follow up with some light attacks and they will not be able to recover in time. We can afford to use the ability in ways like this thanks to the perk Mighty Protector. Due to that, we are gaining the ability at a much quicker rate and therefore getting a lot more uses of it. As a result, we don't need to only save it for those defensive situations, and we can afford the luxury of using it offensively in scenarios such as this. And when you start to use your ability in team fights to hit multiple enemies, this is when things get juicy, as can be seen in these clips.
My defenses are ready. Enemy ranger.
Outlaws.
Enemy here. My defenses are ready.
Something I'm pretty sure people would probably already figure out by themselves, but I thought I'd just mention it anyway. Eidaa does have this little animation thing that she runs through after activating her ability, where she like slams her hand on the ground and does some stuff, which can be seen here.
My defenses are ready.
So yeah, a little bit on the slow side, but make no mistake about it, she does not need to complete that animation before she is ready to attack. She can attack literally immediately after activating the ability. She can attack as quickly as this.
My defenses are ready.
So as you can see, pretty fast there, so just bear that in mind. Earlier we stated that there might be one or two scenarios where Eida's heavy attack is actually a preferable decision. As we've mentioned previously, it's such a slow and telegraphed attack, it's normally quite a bad idea. But the one situation where it's a good idea, as you've probably guessed, is when people are staggered from the ability. When they're staggered, there is nothing they can do to avoid it. It's the one situation where Eidaa is guaranteed to land the heavy, and as you can imagine, when she lands it, it absolutely shreds the enemy. The only thing to be aware of if you're going to try this is that the enemy must be fairly close to you when you do it. The reason being is that Eida's heavy attack animation has very short range. If the enemy is slightly too far away from you, then you might not hit them with both attacks of the double heavy chain that she does. If you're only going to hit them with one of the attacks, then it's not worth it. You may as well follow up with light attacks. But if you can pull it off, then it's worth it, because it's obviously a lot more damage than the light chain. Again, using the lock-on target feature is a must for this. Just one final note on the ability usage. Obviously, now that you have the stagger effect on the ability, it can now also be used as an escape mechanism if need be. And don't be afraid to use it in this way. Sometimes it's the best play. As I'm sure you're aware by now, it's not always about getting kills, and sometimes it's all about just staying alive as long as possible. This wins games just as much as getting kills does.
My defenses are ready. Enemy brawler.
So that just about covers the uses of the ability. As I've stated before, you can still always use it in the traditional defensive sense, to defend the winch, etc. And this is almost always a good decision, but at least this way you also have the option to use it in an aggressive way. As I've demonstrated, and as I'm sure you've seen, it is a massive game changer, and it makes a big difference to Eida's playstyle. I promise, once you start to use the ability in this way, you will notice that you will be getting a lot more kills and winning a lot more of your matches. Finally, just a couple of honorary mentions. The first one is also linked to the ability. As you'll see in a clip where I was able to stop a Marianne who was ready and waiting to assassinate me as soon as I came out of my assassination animation, and I was able to prevent that from happening through the use of the stagger on my ability. So just bear in mind that you can also use it in that way.
Watch the shadows. My defenses are ready.
Then the second thing is just like a cool thing I've noticed Eidaa can do. I think it's mostly down to the fact that her full run speed is almost like quicker than most of the other Outlaws' full run speed. So I'm sure you've been in this situation plenty of times before where the enemy is just like full sprinting away from you because they've realised they're going to lose the fight, or they're chasing somebody else or whatever. So when they do this, it's quite hard to catch up with them and actually put some real damage in to finish them off. So one thing Eidaa can do is you basically just sprint after them. She can basically catch up with them, and then you just put a sneaky, just one single light attack in their back. This will stun them and slow them down, in which time you crouch and you can actually get away with an assassination before they can turn around. When you get the timing down for this, it works really well and it's really effective.
Enemy ranger. You have failed.
So as promised, we're going to end on one full match. At this point I've done quite a lot of talking, so you're probably quite happy for me to shut up. So yeah, we're just going to roll the footage. Enjoy.
Guard, here. Guard, here. Guard, here.
Did you see something over there? No one here.
Did you see somebody over there? Drop it.
No one here.
Drop it.
Sheriff, here.
Smell your fear. No one here.
that over there?
There's ammo here. Gearbox here. Just what I need.
Come on then.
For the people. Shushed! We need to be quieter.
Yeah. Did you see somebody over there?
Your time here is over. Enemy brawler. For the people. Gearbox here. Fuck! Dead or aware?
Get her.
You will remember this. Get to the extraction point. Shit! They know.
Oh, yeah.
The state will hunt us for what we have done. My defenses are ready.
Portcullis here.
Enemy brawler. Enemy ranger. Enemy brawler. Gearbox here. gearbox here.
That about wraps up the Eidaa guide. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did like it, or maybe if you learned something, then please do drop a like and a subscribe. That'd be much appreciated, or maybe even leave a comment to let me know. Until next time, always watch the shadows, and I'll see you in the next one.